Okay,
We're back.
we're back.
All right, Maverick.
Our review
Top
of Maverick.
Gun
You want to go
2.
first?
Yeah, I mean, okay, first of all, Tom Cruise doesn't age,
No.
and it's kind of
Unreal.
astounding how in good shape he is.
Do you think it's Scientology? Are they giving him something? Like, what is there some actual magic
honestly,
to this religion?
Honestly, most
Like-
people aren't ugly; they're just poor. That's just how it is.
That's a good point.
He's just made so much money that he has like all the best things in the world just to keep him looking young.
I mean, there has to be. Is there any plastic surgery involved? There has to be. Like, I don't
I'm
know.
sure, but
Like-
done in such a good way
Yeah,
that you
like
can't even tell.
high-end plastic surgery.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know what he's doing.
I mean,
but
he's fantastic in it. Like, I think for the most part, most of these people were really good. I thought.
yeah. In
I
terms
thought
of acting,
the movie. Yeah, I thought the acting was good. The action was phenomenal.
Yeah.
The story was good, but that wasn't really the point of the movie.
Mhm.
Almost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously like the wartime nostalgia was good as well. I just thought it was an all round good movie, like well executed,
Yeah.
summer blockbuster fun, and it made sense why they wanted to wait for this time to release it.
Yes. I do respect that so much when Tom was basically, I don't make movies for
Yeah,
TV.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude.
there was no way in hell
Yeah, let's
that
go.
he was gonna say, "Yeah, Paramount, go ahead and put this on Paramount." Plus."
I think they were like, I mean, a lot of them were saying like 200, like some studios were offering like 200, 300 million.
Yeah.
Obviously that looks stupid now. And I think, Tom Cruise knew it. I think he knew like this was going to do very well in the box office. I think Paramount knew
Yeah.
it too. Like I'm sure he wasn't fighting Paramount that much to like not sell it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure
I-
Paramount was on his side.
I was really surprised that it performed so well because it was pushed out so many. Like usually when that happens, I mean, granted, yes, COVID impacted all the original release plans, but usually when there's like hype and then it goes away and then they push it out
Yep.
and then there's hype, like it never performs well.
There was a movie that
Right.
suffered through that. James Bond kind of went through that crap where they like marketed it like 3 different times.
Yeah, but then
And-
that one didn't do that. Well, what
No.
did okay, right?
It was okay. It wasn't great.
So there is something surprising about this, but I think at the end of the day, it's because a group of people that had not returned to movies yet now kind of return, right? We're
Yes.
talking about
A lot of repeat viewing though too.
a lot of repeat viewing.
I think what really helped was that the movie was great. I think that really helped it a lot because I
Yeah.
think if you look at it, not only were the declines pretty low weekend over weekend, which is mainly a sign of good word of mouth. Like if word
Yeah.
of mouth is bad, then that means there's a bigger drop off usually because no one's recommending it.
yeah.
But if it's so, there's good word of mouth like in that like aspect, but also a lot like I think Paramount was even saying like 20% of the people who were going to see the movie were seeing it for like their second or third time.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So like I think it helps that it's just a good movie,
Yeah.
which is unfortunately rare in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, it basically is a highly marketable but also highly playable
Yes.
movie. So it has legs and it's very highly
And I'll
marketable.
tell
That's
you,
rare.
I think there's a couple of things they did in it that a lot of sequels fall under the spell of doing that they didn't do here, which was I think a big one is, like exactly copying the same plot as the first one, which they didn't do. I mean, there's some elements obviously they kept, but it made sense for the context of the story. Like one of the like complaints that I've heard is like, oh, they did the football scene like it's the same as the volleyball scene, and I'm
Right.
like, yes, like. It is a copy of the first one, but it made sense in the context of the story itself.
Right.
Like if he's teaching a group of kids about teamwork, he's going to be like, well, what worked when I was a kid?
Yeah.
I'm going to do the same thing. So it made sense in the context of the story.
Right.
And I've also gone that it's like, it was maybe too simplistic. I'm like, you only really need like whatever makes sense for the story. That's all you need to include. Like we didn't need that much backstory on Goose's son.
Yeah.
Like one of the complaints I've heard is like, oh, I need more of his backstory. Like, do you? For the context of the story, it's really Maverick's story.
Yeah.
Do you need to know like Goose's son's entire childhood without his dad? It's not relevant to the story.
Right.
Then you only have so much time.
The real emotional aspect of the movie is this supposed emotional connection between them.
Yes.
But you don't have to
Yeah.
know about Goose's like background.
Yeah, you just need to
needed
know the relevant stuff,
that
which
there was
is
a relationship there.
Right. There was a relationship there, and you need to
Yeah.
know why Goose's son, Rooster, hated Tom Cruise at the beginning of the movie. They explain that, they get through it, and that they resolve it at the end of the movie. That's a good story.
Yep.
That's all you need to know. The second one that I think is big is that, and a lot of Hollywood movies do this recently, especially if the main protagonist was a white dude and they want to replace him with something more progressive,
Yeah.
they will demean and just ruin the hero to make way for the new person.
Right.
So like
Someone who's
example
just-
is like Star Wars, where basically Luke Skywalker was just a pussy,
Yeah.
you know, and just like a loser.
Yeah.
While Rey was like all perfect and all powerful, and
And
she was better than everybody else. And everyone's like, what happened to the guy that I fell in love with in the original movies?
Right.
They did not do that in this one.
They didn't
were like,
create a
Tom Cruise
diverse,
is still a
infallible
badass
character.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was the same character. Like Luke Skywalker in the new Star Wars was barely the same character as the one that we saw change and develop and grow up as a Jedi in the first one.
Yeah.
Versus the Maverick that we saw in 2 was the exact same Maverick we saw in 1. It was the same character.
Yeah.
And you could tell that, and that's smart writing, which
think-
most Hollywood studios aren't able to do.
I will say that group of students that they pulled in, like obviously they were trying to pull in like a new diverse crowd for it.
Yeah.
But they didn't really use those characters enough. Like you could have, there was no depth to any of the supporting
No.
characters, right?
No. And that's true.
And I guess you don't have to, but I think you feel less attached to this cohort than like the original, where you learn more about everyone else.
You do, although remember in the first one, you didn't really know that much about the other ones except for Maverick and Goose, really.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
You didn't know, like, the main focus of like having that group was basically the rivalries.
Yeah.
So and they do kind of they probably could have played the rivalries a little bit more. Obviously you had Hangman, who's kind of that douche.
Yeah, but you
So you
didn't
kinda
really
saw that
You
with-
didn't really see like any
could've been
real
more.
stakes. Yeah.
It could have been more.
Yeah.
So they maybe could have improved on that, but it kind of worked for the context of the movie, honestly, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So
What didn't you like about the movie? I have my own.
I mean, I
thoughts
think
about what I did.
there are a couple of things. Like, obviously, like I think the love story was a little bit weird because,
Yeah.
like, they were just like they kind of had you assume a backstory, even though she wasn't in the first one. So
Yeah,
they're like,
that was
oh,
the
he has
biggest
this
thing
whole
for me.
backstory, and I'm like,
What was the
nobody
point of it?
knows the back of story, right? Is like, what was the point of him having a romantic lead at all?
Yeah. No,
I mean, they could
have
have heightened the stakes at least on the romantic lead part.
They could have cut that entire arc out,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't have changed the movie at all. I mean,
I think they were like,
granted,
we need
w-
romance, and like they were like, romance sells, which
Yeah.
to be fair, it does, but you
Well-
could have at least given the romance a little bit more stake.
Yeah.
I don't know, like
I mean, Jennifer Connelly is great. I love
she's great.
having her in it. It just didn't seem necessary for
Right.
the story.
it also felt weird, like there was one part where she was like, "Don't screw my mom" or "Don't leave her again," and you don't know why he left her the first time, so you're like,
Yeah.
okay. And then secondly, like usually when something like that happens, that's usually foreshadowing, so you're like, okay, he's gonna mess with her, and he never does.
Right.
So like, well, then what was the point of that whole like? Were you setting up stakes for nothing to happen?
Yeah.
So I was kind of like waiting for like a betrayal.
Yeah.
Like maybe he betrays her in some way, which is what most stories would do, and they just didn't do that at all.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if I didn't like or liked, to be honest. I was like,
I just felt it was like totally unnecessary.
it was kind of unnecessary. It didn't really add much to the plot.
I do think the plot itself was like the perfect amount of simplistic.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Like-
think it needed to be simple.
Yeah.
Like I think one of my friends critiqued it because they go, it's kind of lazy. I'm like, I think you're confusing with lazy with just simple.
yeah.
And there's beauty to simplicity.
Yep.
Like it's actually good to be simple. You just lazy writing is just like I need to get somewhere and I need to get there at all costs, no matter how illogical
Right.
it is to get there.
Yep.
That's lazy writing. I think like what good writing is I'm just gonna like how do I get to this in a natural way that makes sense to the arc of the characters
for the purpose of the story.
for the purpose of the story.
Yeah, and
right.
you don't have to overcomplicate it if it doesn't need to be.
Exactly, and that's also part of the reason why I'm like I don't think we need to get into the backstory of every like person in that squadron because you eventually start if you focus on all these different characters, you eventually start everyone's just confused because there's like multiple different stories basically. So I think you need to think about it in terms of like what's relevant for Maverick's story.
Yeah.
And they basically from each individual character they took out what was important in terms of Maverick's point of view in terms of like I don't need to know this random pilot's like childhood story because in terms of the context of Maverick's story in the movie, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
I thought the we should have probably given a spoiler disclaimer at the beginning, but I
Maybe we
thought
put
it
it in
was
the title.
really
Yeah.
smart. Yeah, we should put it in. I thought it was really smart that they didn't actually state which place they were in conflict with,
Oh yeah.
and that was like
That's pretty
clearly
funny.
because I mean I think in the first one it was
I think it was Russia.
Yeah, it was like
think.
pretty clearly Russia, right?
Yeah.
But this one they left it like purposely vague, and I think they've even removed some elements of it that were like slightly political.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of it was smart and also kind of pandering to global distribution opportunities. But I thought it didn't even matter because that's not the important part.
I know. They made it
right?
such a huge deal off of, I think he had some, like, I think maybe the Japanese and Taiwanese flags or patch on his jacket. And they're like, he took it off for China. It's like, yeah, I mean, they shouldn't do that. But at the same time, it's like,
it's actually
Japan and Taiwan really give a crap.
It's
like,
a small thing.
It's a tiny thing. Nobody even noticed probably from the first one.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, there's always going to be somewhat pandering in Hollywood. That's just a reality of that. And frankly, China is kind of making them pay because a lot of them pander, and then China's like still like, nah. So it doesn't always work for them.
Yeah.
But I do think Hollywood studios are fighting back. I know, like, Spider-Man like refused. Spider-Man, I don't think, went into China because China was like, the whole final battle was on the Statue of Liberty, and China was like, can you just get that out? And they were like, no.
Yeah, there's no way that's cutting out.
Yeah, which I love. So there should be more of that. But
yeah,
you can probably only do it with Spider-Man.
But anyways, are you gonna watch it again?
Oh man, I don't know. It's very good. Like the action scenes are also amazing too.
Yeah.
I would. I probably won't, but I would.
I would rewatch it once it comes out on Paramount Plus.
Yeah. Yes.
When it inevitably
I will definitely
does
rewatch
come
it.
out, I will rewatch it.
Yeah.
So, out of 10, what would you give it?
I won't say it's a 10 just because I think that's reserved for like something truly unique.
How many 10s
originals
are there in this world?
There's not that many. Like I want something that like just blows my mind.
Yeah.
To be even a 9 or a 10, it needs to be like an original concept that like I fell in love with.
And it sticks with your mind for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
this isn't that.
So I would say this is an 8 because I think it's the best you can probably do with a sequel.
Yep.
And I think it did kind of set the groundwork for like what you should do if you have like if they ever make a remake of like the Gumpies or something, like any like random one-off movie, like this is kind of the template you stick to. It's the perfect balance of maintaining the magic of the original while also advancing the story. I think it kind of
agreed.
did a great job.
I would give it a little bit more, like 8.2, 8.3, something like that, just because I feel like it's one of those movies that like perfectly executed with what it had.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, and to your point as well, it's like a good sequel. How many good sequels are there?
Yeah. No,
so,
I mean, one of my biggest complaints has always been like, I hate that they always keep doing remakes and sequels.
Yeah.
And this is the first time, and I was like, you know what?
Yep.
This was worth it.
Yep.
Like,
entertaining, worth it.
Great job.
Definitely worth a watch.
Yep.
In the theaters.
All right, we recommend.
Yep. All right. Well, next time.
See you guys next. Peace.